Is there anything beyond the self?
The self is the source. There's nothing beyond the source. Everything comes out of the source, and everything returns to the source. It's the basis of everything. Self and source are not different. They're the same. Now, if we're thinking in the terms of self as mind and body, they come out of, mind and body come out of the self, again, which is the source. But often it has to do with, you understand the word semantics. It has to do with semantics. It's what do you mean by the words that you use? What are the meanings of self? Well, if we use self in English, and that's the only language I speak, you'll have to forgive me. In English, the word self can be used with a small s, or it can be used with a capital S. When we use the word self, meaning the being, the true being, the source, then it's self with a capital S. But if we mean self as the body and the mind, then it's self with a little s, a small s. And that makes a distinction, that makes a difference. So if we're thinking of the self with the little s as the body and the mind, then they come out of the source, or self with a capital S. But there is nothing prior to, beyond, the self with a capital S. It's the source out of which everything appears and into which everything returns. Okay? Anything else?
Ramana. Yesterday I saw Ganeshan and heard an inspiring story about Bhagavad, concerning Bhagavad, and I thought I would share it with you if you like. You may know the story, but it concerns Maurice Friedman. And for those of you that don't know, Maurice Friedman is the one who recorded the dialogues of Nisargadatta, I Am That. But Friedman was very well placed in relation to important people in government. He was a friend of Nehru, he was a friend of many important government officials, and he was able to send things into Poland, where he was from Poland. He was able to send things by means of the diplomatic pouch, which means that the contents of this pouch go across the border and they're not inspected. So he was able to do that. And so he developed the practice of getting various ashrams to contribute literature. He would get literature from Krishnamurti, from Swami Ram Das, from Shivananda, and he would send this in the pouch because it was forbidden in Poland to have this kind of subversive literature. So And he contacted Ganeshan, who was head of the ashram, and had Ganeshan send repeatedly, not just one time, but over, a number of times, send him pictures that had been duplicated of Ramana Maharshi. It was block print, wood block pictures, but anyway, pictures of Ramana Maharshi. And after a while, Ganeshan, found out what he was doing, with the picture, and they were sending these things in a diplomatic pouch. And he says, well, you're sending literature from Swami Ram Das and from Shivananda, but you've never asked me for literature. All you asked me for are these pictures. And what Friedman told him was, they don't need anything but the picture. That's enough. I thought that was a beautiful story.
Yes. Bhagavan's picture is very captivating. And not only, what a paradox. It's captivating and it's freeing. All at the same time. It draws you to it and then frees you. I believe, I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe that Maurice Friedman was the one who asked the questions that Bhagavan answered that are in about 2 or 3 of the chapters in the book Maharishi's Gospel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, according to Ganeshan, he compiled that.
Is that right?
Put it together, yes.
I wasn't for sure, I wasn't aware, but I just was suspecting that he was.
Yeah, he's the editor of that.
That's a very significant book. It's the one that got me. Not actually not in the present form that I'm speaking of in Maharishi's Gospel. I was drawn to the book called The Spiritual Teachings of Ramana Maharshi, which is published by Shambhala in America. But it contains the Gospel, the Maharishi's Gospel, along with 3 other important works altogether. But a very significant work to me. And I recommend it to everyone. It's a very significant work to everyone in understanding Bhagavan Ramana and his teaching. Some of you that are new may not know that this ashram and our one in America is the only institutions in the world that teaches Bhagavan Ramana's pure teachings. Individuals do, many individuals do, but we're the only institution as a school that teaches Sri Bhagavan Ramana's pure teaching of self-inquiry. I might add, even his own ashram doesn't.
Does self-inquiry take place in meditation or in rational thought?
You might say it's kind of the other way around, that meditation takes place in self-inquiry. The difference between self-inquiry and meditation is that meditation occurs in duality. When there's an I meditating on other, when the sense of I is meditating on not I or other, such as a point in consciousness, which is I, meditating on another point in consciousness, which is the object of meditation. So there's the subject meditating on object. That's meditation, but in self-inquiry, it's only the subject, only the I, and the returning of the I to the pure awareness out of which the I rises as thought. So it's not one thought meditating on another thought, it's the ending of thought. It's the returning of consciousness or the mind into pure consciousness prior to thought and totally free of thought. That's the difference. So you can say that meditation in the form of pure being occurs with inquiry, but inquiry does not occur with meditation, because you're still remaining in the mind, whereas inquiry is not remaining in the mind, it's dissolving or withdrawing the mind into the pure awareness of being. Are you getting what I'm saying? Okay? That's a very important distinction. And Bhagavan Ramana is the only, that this teaching is the only teaching. It's the most direct and immediate way to return attention, the mind, back into the pure awareness of being, directly and immediately. All other methods kind of beat around the bush, but not inquiry. It goes directly into the pure awareness of being, directly into the self, and dissolves the separate sense of I. Are you getting what I'm saying?
So it's dependent on where you place your consciousness.
Well, when you say placing consciousness, what do you mean by that?
Where I place my mental consciousness, where it dissolves.
So when you give attention, where you place your attention?
In the self.
Well, when you consider attention itself, see, attention can see everything except itself. Like your eyes. Your eyes can see everything but themselves. Your finger, it can point to everything, but it can't point to itself. In exactly the same manner, your being can be and see everything, but it can't be and it can't see itself. So in that manner, you withdraw your attention back to the source of attention itself. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yes. When I said it's dependent on where we place our consciousness, I was saying it's dependent on where we place our attention.
That's what I'm saying. Where are you placing your attention?
On the self.
All right? Can Now, what is it that is attending?
Itself.
Yes, so you are just abiding in attention as attention.
When does it start to dissolve then? From attention into...
What's he saying?
When does it start to dissolve?
There is no dissolving. You are it. The mind dissolves, or the mind stops, and it's, when I say dissolves, it's conditioning. All of its accumulated conditioning, all of its limitation is dissolved in the pure awareness of being, as you just abide in the pure awareness of being as the pure awareness of being. Then all limitation, all sense of other, all that is not self, now is no longer identified with. And to what extent that is no longer identified with, it cannot have any influence and effect upon you. Then you're free from it. And I just use those words to mean dissolve. Dissolving from your attention so that it no longer affects you. It's there to be used whenever it's appropriate, whenever it's beneficial. It's still present to be used, but it is no longer affecting you. It's no longer limiting you in any way. You understand what I'm saying? Okay.
I would like to share something that's been a perplexity for me, and I mean, I'm not so sure how active that is right now, but I'm sure there's probably some residue left, so maybe it's worth for me to explore it. But it has to do with, maybe I could give an analogy, like when Kerry ran against Bush, it seemed to me that everybody loved Kerry because they hated Bush. And so that I couldn't see really what the positive aspects of Kerry was, at least not like I could with Bush and Obama. I mean, a choice for Obama seemed like a positive choice out of volition, like this is obvious. A choice for Kerry seemed like it's kind of like a vote against. So then if we say that your body-mind is the source of all your confusions, choose pure being. And it's almost like you're choosing pure being. I wonder if you're even cheapening pure being, using it, the temptation might be to use it like a tool to escape. Okay, my wife is driving me crazy, oh, pure being. And I don't know, in one sense, it's kind of like an artificial choice that I don't know what pure being is. I can get to a point of stillness, let's say, and it would feel much better if I just couldn't stay away from pure being because it was just too delicious, and then of course I'd always be there. And in the other sense, it seems like it reinforces the suffering as a motivating, because you're using it as a motivating factor to jump, and it's giving more energy to suffering, which is an illusion anyhow, and it's solidifying the suffering part and making it even more of a preference that you get out of there, get lost, get out of the body-mind. Basically, you throw the baby away with the bathwater. I mean, the body, I know this is just my notion, I may be totally confused, but the body, it should be, I think it's totally innocent. It's just our apparatus that it's always in the present. It's a good guy, actually. And the mind probably is innocent too, because the mind didn't condition itself. Conditioning is. So then, the two things that I'm asking, basically, to choose pure being has always kind of seemed like an escape tactic, and to build the energy that the body-mind is the bad guy seems like it's building an illusion to be stronger and stronger. And that held me back for a long time. I mean, now I'm much more able to jump into pure being and say, I like it, you know. But before I was saying, no, this can't be. Why would there be a preference? Why should I have a preference that, okay, this is what comes to me today, but no, I want left, I don't want right. And if you have that preference, I mean, how can you be embracing whatever is happening? You're always choosing. That was my perplexity.
You covered a lot of questions. Actually, the body and the mind are not the bad guy. And it's not a matter of escaping, other than once you recognize that suffering is occurring, then you will want to escape the suffering. If you're not suffering, if you have no discomfort from your identification with your body and your mind, then there's no need to escape from the discomfort. So the escape idea is to be free of suffering. Now it so happens that if you're abiding in the pure awareness of being as the pure awareness of being, and you have not identified with the mind and its the mind which is subject to being conditioned by time and space and all of the experiences and all of the events that occur in time and space, every thought that rises in the mind cannot rise unless it has an opposite. Every good thought has its opposite, which is bad. So you have to deal with that. So when you're looking to make a choice, you have to make a choice in the mind between good and not good, right and wrong, you see, good and evil, so to speak. You have to. That's necessary, simply because that's the nature of duality. So in duality is where choices have to be made as to what is pleasant and what's unpleasant. So when you rise into identification with the body and the mind actually is not capable of staying in time and space without there being a form that it identifies with. And that form that it identifies with the one who we're now addressing, who has a question, is the form is the body.
I just want to stop a second and say, wow, that's big, you know. I mean, I think we could even pause on that, because you said the mind cannot stay cannot stay without a form. In other words, without a form, so it has to manufacture a form in order to exist.
Exactly. So it's only in form that the mind remains and identifies, only with form. It cannot remain in the formless. If it were to stay in the formless, there is no mind. The formless is called the mindless, or the free of mind, prior to mind. Okay, so it's the mind in conjunction with the body in time and space. So time and space, the location of duality and the body and thought Thought then is what directs experiences, events, movement, activity, which is where events are taking place in time and space. But prior to time and space, there is no thing, nothing. Emptiness, which is not void, but it's full. It's empty of all experience. It's prior to experience. It's like a mirror. A mirror reflects everything appearing on it, but you can't brush away that which is appearing on it, nor can you grasp and hold on to that which is appearing on it. And nothing that is appearing on it affects the mirror. The mirror is ever shining, ever present. Likewise with awareness. Awareness is ever shining, ever present, but nothing affects it. Nothing changes it. Nothing colors it. You see, it's always as it is. The same way with awareness. Awareness is, I guess that's what I was talking about, is awareness. The mirror and the analogy and awareness. Now the mind, on the other hand, it accumulates, it acquires. That's what a conditioning is. It remembers. It retains. And so in its retention, in its retaining, it retains that which is both good and not good, happy and unhappy, pleasant and unpleasant, that which we like and that which we dislike. That's the mind. It's not bad, it's just its nature. That's just the way it works. So when we begin to understand that the body and the mind work together, or they live together in time and space, and neither one of them can exist apart from the pure awareness out of which they arise, then it's a matter of coming together in an understanding of the relationship that exists between awareness and the mind, and the body and the mind. And once this understanding is developed and known, and then you just abide and remain in the awareness itself and observe what's taking place in the events of time and space, and don't get identified with what's taking place in time and space. And that's the way to live free, at peace, and happy.
That's really clear. I wish I heard that. That should be the preamble or chapter 1.
All right?
Yeah, I love it.
Well, it's the preamble right now. It's
Right
chapter
is, it sure is.
Right now. Okay. That's our local crow. He's coming around for Satsang. He hasn't learned yet to just be silent.
He thinks he has something to crow about.
Yes, he does. He's crowing for another crow.
Ramana, I have a question. Who is it, or what is it, that decides not to identify with the mind or the body? suffering as a conscious entity?
Not as an entity, as a quality. It's not a
But-
who, it's not a who. There is no there's no necessity to not identify. So there is no one anyway. There is no one to identify or not identify. There is only being. So the quality that will activate, you might say, the non-identification that will give the movement to, or the motivation, or whatever word you want to use, to not identifying with the body-mind, is getting it that to what extent you stay identified with it in form, that in itself is a limitation and the product of suffering.
But you speak as though there's a choice to be made whether to identify with suffering, with body-mind. Right?
The choice appears to be, there appears to be a choice that appears to occur with an apparent ego.
Okay.
But in truth, there is no such entity. As long as there seems to be such an entity, then there will appear also to be a choice.
It's this I thought.
Yes, I thought, ego, mind, synonymous.
When doing the inquiry, there comes a point where one can say, you know, what, so one's attention, say, is on the self. One's attention is on the self, on aware, okay? Following the sense of I, coming into awareness, okay?
When you say there's a point in which one's attention is on the self, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that in doing the inquiry,
All right?
individual attention is focused on self.
Now, right there, for there to be a seeming individual whose attention is focused on the self, there first is required a prior sense of separation.
Yes, and the individual who takes
that-
up the practice of inquiry,
Now that individual would be synonymous with the sense of there being separation, the
Yes.
I that is separated.
yes.
Okay.
But the poor, ordinary soul living in ignorance, who takes up the practice of inquiry, thinks of himself as an individual who's doing this practice,
Exactly, yeah.
right?
All right.
Okay, so here is the practitioner of the inquiry, and following the instruction he's been given, he brings his individual awareness into, into self. Okay? We all understand that it's duality and it's nothing, it's all non-dual in truth, but this is the way it appears to the individual.
All right.
Then, sitting in silence, no thought, just awareness, then some thought comes up. You know, and Bhagavan says, no matter how many times the thought comes up, you ask, who is having this thought?
Yes.
Who is having this thought? In other words, continue with the inquiry. So there's this choice to be made, this decision to be made by that apparent individual to ask this question, or to make this inquiry, to do this investigation.
They just return attention into
That's
the source.
Right. Okay. Who makes this choice?
You just answered it yourself. Look at your question. You just answered it yourself. It's far more effective for you to get it for yourself than it is for me to give you an answer. Just retrace your steps and retrace your very words that you're using.
All right. The apparent individual.
There you are.
Yes. So it's the apparent individual,
Yeah.
once again, who makes the choice to put the attention on awareness.
Yes. Now, how does he get the power to do that? From the self
From the
itself.
self.
And as long as there's this apparent I, an ego, apparent I, a seeming or apparent individual, as long as there's that sense of that being, of there being such an entity,
As long as there's any choice to be made.
huh?
As long as there's any choice to be made.
Exactly. As long as there is any sense of there being an individual,
Yeah.
the sense of the being individual is itself subject to thought and the result of thought. And all thought carries with it duality.
Yeah.
Good and not good. Like and dislike. So, experience keeps occurring. Or events happen. Events happen and experience happens with this I that is now having an experience. The mind itself that is having this experience, and it's repeating, recording and repeating, recording and repeating, recording and repeating. It's constantly recording and repeating. But the pure awareness is not affected by any of that. All that is affected by it is the mind, the body and the mind. That's the one now who makes the choice after some time of recording and repeating and recording and repeating, experiencing and experiencing and experiencing to, wait a minute, I've had enough. I think I would rather be happy. I'd rather be at peace. I'd rather be free. A choice. That's the choice. That's the reasoning. The mind has that capacity. It has that ability. And it does that all the time, making a choice. Usually, in the ordinary individual you're talking about, unless he has come into spiritual practice, his choices are going to be external into the world, onto more and better and different events and situations and experiences in the world. The accumulation of more. When more is not enough, better. When better is not enough, different. When different is not enough, more of that which is different. And a constant repetition recording and repeating, recording and repeating, recording and repeating, until eventually oh, I'm tired of this, suffering. The dislike builds up along with the like. There's a lot of liking that keeps one motivating and going, but there's a lot of disliking that eventually builds up to the point where I think I'm ready to rest. I'm ready to return home. Prodigal son in the Bible. Return home. Okay?
It seems like since you just responded to me, a lot of lights are really going off, you know, like that I'm really starting to understand, because you explained the body, the mind mechanism in a great way, also saying that it was, in a way, they're not the bad guy, the body, mind, they're not the bad guy, which kind of raises the blinds and lets you look at it in a new light. Like just now you were saying, and it just got clear to me that, you know, the more pleasure we get out of the mind, the more suffering is growing right along with it. It's side by side, you know. It has to be there, you know. And you can, okay, so I'm just going to look at the good part and not keep ignoring this part. But it's growing right there along the side by side. And the other thing that came to me was kind of like a really kind of a shock that when you explained just a while ago that the mind is always recording. See, so it's collecting and grasping. So then I just figured, like, oh my God, that anyone that's operating out of that, that's what greed is about. You know, it's not, greed is just natural. It's not really, it's just that when you're operating from collecting, then collecting becomes a habit of everything. You know, you're collecting knowledge, you're collecting money, you're collecting wealth, you're collecting experiences, you're collecting relationships, you're collecting notoriety, and that's just when you're operating out of the collector. Of course, that's, you know, that's not even, probably even greed is not the bad guy, you know, and the ones that harp on greed so much are probably the envious. So they have to make a, you know, they say, I wish I had that, so this guy must be greedy because I don't have it. So then everything is really getting clear, like when you drop the bad guys, you know, and say, well, this one's bad and this one's this, then all of a sudden clarity can shine. And I really appreciate that. It's a really stellar morning.
All right. Okay. Yes.
As a child, I heard someone say, we all live in our own bubble. And I wasn't sure what that meant. I came to see perhaps it meant that we all had our own view of the world because we were in this bubble. And it sort of got richer, this analogy to me, because there's sort of like this endless space, and inside the bubble there's space also, and this bubble is the most fragile thing, and on the surface it's always in movement, but at any moment it can burst, and that all our fear of death and losing things and whatever we identify with just poof goes in one moment, and there we are left without any individuality, just space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Ramana, I'm not sure how to put this in words, an observation. There's a tree, up, that tree that's beyond
This
the
big one
building.
way back there?
Yeah,
Mm.
and noticing it every time we're here. But every time seeing it, it's as though it's not new, it's always been. Am I being clear? It's like, there's a familiarity with it as though there has not been a time when it wasn't.
For you.
For me, yeah, it's like, that it's there each time, but it's only one time. It's only the now that it's being seen. And every time I see it, it's now that I'm seeing it, but it's the same, it's the
Yes,
same one.
I see. Yes. Everything that we see in the moment of seeing it, this moment is what's always here. Now that which we're seeing may be itself repeating in the remembering of the time we've seen it before, but what's really always the same is the presence on which it's occurring, or in which it's occurring. Again, like a mirror. There may be a repeating of an image in the mirror, and we may become familiar with that image that repeats itself in the mirror. Well, what's the image that most likely will repeat itself in a mirror that we see? Wouldn't it be our own face? But even in seeing it, we're seeing it in the mirror. What's constant there is the mirrors. Because the image on the face is going to be constantly changing. It may seem like, well, this is my face. I've seen this face many times, it's the same face. But in one sense, it's not the same face because it's changing. It's not the same, maybe one of the hairs is moved, huh? Maybe you washed your hair and it's wet before last time you looked in and your hair was dry. Even the cells that make up your skin are different. So there's a constant change going on, but in the awareness, which is likened to the mirror, it's always the same. Always the same. Well, we're kind of coming down to the completion of this time together, this session. I would imagine, or I would think that Jan earlier invited everyone to come back again, but I will. Everyone is invited to return. What's the day?
Today's Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday. All right. All days are the same for me, so I just have to ask sometimes. Come back Friday if you're still in the area, if you're still here. You're welcome to return. There's not much happening here, and yet everything is happening here. The source is happening here. Of course, the source is happening everywhere, but here there's a continual reminding of the source that is ever present, and the attention is ever on it. Stay in it now, and be happy. Namaste.
Namaste.